If you opened up Fall of the Republic 1.3 ready to win the Clone Wars as the Republic or CIS, or even Thrawn's Revenge and Revan's Revenge if you're watching this in the future, but then got scared by this new infrastructure number up here in the left-hand side of the UI because you don't know what it means, then don't worry, I've got you covered. In this guide, I'll be breaking down what it means and how to keep it happy. It may seem intimidating or complicated at first because it is a new number to look at, but in practice it's actually very simple. At its core, your infrastructure score is a measure of how many buildable slots you have open across your faction versus how many buildable slots you have filled. As long as you're not leaving your planets more empty than full, you're going to be fine. There are a few other factors, but that's the most important thing going on here. So let's take a look at an example planet to see how this works in practice, what the impact is, and talk about some of the best, most efficient ways to develop your planets to get the most out of them, both with infrastructure and with other parts of your economy. Say you have a planet with up to a level 5 station and 5 ground slots. If you have nothing built here, that would be 10 empty slots, giving you -10 to your infrastructure score from that planet. If you have all 10 filled, that's +10 to your infrastructure score. Your infrastructure score is based on your entire faction, so while we're looking at one planet as an example, you don't need to worry about how it balances out on a planet-by-planet basis. You only have to care about this one number. If your score drops below 0, you'll start to get penalties for how fast you can build and how expensive things will be to build. But if you keep 95% or more of your building slots on ground and space filled, you'll get a bonus to build time and cost across your faction. The first thing to do to make sure you're not going into the negatives is to make sure you're not conquering more planets than you can support, like with any overextension penalty in any 4X game. If you only have a score of 8, but then you see a planet like our example one with 5 ground and 5 space slots, you want to increase your infrastructure to support that new planet before taking it. We already know that planet is going to be worth -10 points when it's empty, but what's the best way to build up to prepare for that? For one thing, remember that any building you build not only gives you its own +1 to your score, it's taking away an empty slot. So that's a 2-point swing overall. If I have that 8 infrastructure score, then I build one structure, I'm getting a point from that, but I'm losing an empty slot, so I'm going to 10. With basically every new planet you conquer, you're going to want to do a few things to get your infrastructure going, as well as just support your economy generally. First is your basic government structure. This will immediately make it so that your planet is giving its full credit amount every week, and it gives a considerable garrison on defense, discouraging attacks, along with unlocking most other structures for production. So you want to build these basically everywhere regardless. You'll also want to get the level 1 station for similar reasons. It stops the enemy from being able to just fly over your planets, and it enables you to build the other additional space structures. Next, if your planet has a special economic structure like a mining facility available, you'll want to grab that. And if that planet has 150 income or higher, you'll probably want to build a tax agency right away. Tax agencies are how you're getting most of your money in the game, and they can almost always be worth it over time as long as the planet makes more than 0 credits, since tax agencies work by doubling the planetary base income. You want to prioritize building one of these on planets that have the highest income down to the lowest, because obviously if you have a planet that's making 300, doubling that is going to be worth more than doubling a lower number. This is a simple way to fill 3 or more slots on most planets in the game, and is a good habit to get into for having a strong economy, even if you didn't have to consider your infrastructure score. The majority of planets in the mod only have 3 or 4 ground slots and only support a level 1 to 3 starbase. So even before specializing any planets, you're able to make most come out even, or even slightly ahead on your net infrastructure score, just by doing basic, healthy economic actions, so we're off to a good start. You don't want to jump the gun by double building tax agencies unless you know you can support them, which we'll get to in a second. Next, you want to think about where you want to build up the most. There may be a few planets which you want to completely fill up, either providing the best defensive options, production options, or providing the best opportunities to increase your infrastructure score. In Empire at War, having multiple of the same factory type on a planet speeds up production. So if you have planets with a high slot count, it can be more worth filling them out with the same type of factory compared to building multiple factories on multiple planets. So using our example of a planet with 5 slots, you could easily get a lot out of it by filling those last 3 slots that we haven't covered yet with 3 barracks, 3 light factories, 3 heavy factories, and so on. Even between planets with similar slot counts, there are a few factors which may influence where you want to build. For one thing, if you build these production facilities on a border planet, that can help you defend later on, and it can discourage AI attacks by being just more built up. On the other hand, if you keep your production facilities behind your front lines, you can more easily keep them safe from attacks. You also want to keep your eye out for some special structure types like the corporations. These give discounts to various unit types depending on which company they're a corporate headquarters for. Different factions will get different amounts of use out of different corporations, so check what it discounts before building it, and then you can build up the planets accordingly. For ground-based corporations in 0.3 onwards, they also count towards being able to build those units, if they are available to your faction. So they basically double as a production facility. So if a planet has access to a corporation, you're probably going to want to build up there more than you're going to want to on another planet. Building a corporation on a planet also increases your influence on that planet. And since the tax agencies we talked about earlier cost influence when they're built, building a corporation can contribute towards allowing you to build a second tax agency. Each tax agency costs 2 influence, and you want to stay above 3. On top of influence increases from building structures like corporations, you can actually increase your influence by filling every ground slot and every space slot. For space, unlike for infrastructure, influence does include the secondary economic, defensive, and construction slots. Infrastructure for space score only cares about these 5 pips with the star bases. Shipyards are the one type of secondary space structure which increases your infrastructure score, so they can be helpful to build as well. But unlike starbase levels and ground slots, empty shipyard slots do not subtract any infrastructure score, so shipyards are only helping you. If you end up with a border planet that has a high possible starbase level and a high shipyard level, that's a great place to put a ground-to-space weapon as well, along with the maximum level starbase and shipyard. Level 3 and 4 shipyards, which are indicated by the number beside the planet, just below your defense station pips, have very strong garrisons, so keep that in mind for both your defenses and planning your attacks. If you have a fully built up station, a ground-to-space cannon, meaning a hypervelocity gun or an ion cannon, depending on which faction you're playing as well as a strong garrison from your shipyard, you can hold off a lot of enemy attacks. There are a few other easy opportunities to look for quick ways to boost infrastructure while supporting other goals for your economy. One involves this happy little structure, helpfully just called local infrastructure. The primary purpose of this building is to increase planetary influence, which can be helpful when looking to tax a planet more or when looking to unlock influence units, which are available on planets like Geonosis, Mandalore, or Balmorra when you have a high influence on the planet. Full information on which planets have bonus influence units or other unique options like the corporate offices we talked about with other economic bonuses can be seen by checking the guides via the buttons on the left side of the screen. On top of its influence bonus, the local infrastructure building gives a bonus infrastructure point, so it's worth 2. It does have an upkeep cost associated with it though, so you only want to build this on select planets where you really need it. If you take a bit of time, plan out where and what to build, and don't just leave your planets empty for the enemy to reconquer, you'll probably find you're able to pretty easily keep ahead with your infrastructure score, as well as helping your faction's overall economy, production, and defenses while doing it. One of the biggest mistakes I see, especially with newer players in Empire at War, is that they just want to attack all the time. On its own, this can sometimes put you in a pretty bad position, which can make the AI just punish you. Or on the other side, if you're winning too much, it means the AI has nothing and battles stop being fun. So by taking some time to make sure that you're taking advantage of your new conquests, you'll both make sure that you're in a stronger position and that you can keep having larger, more fun battles once you get to the enemy's bigger strongholds. There is one other factor I haven't mentioned yet though. Rather than starting from 0, every faction actually starts with a modifier of plus 10 influence, and with each planet that faction owns, a modifier of -2 is added. This particularly helps small factions be able to expand a bit without worrying about that first couple of planets tipping them over the edge, for example in the from the ground up single planet start conquests. So to recap, factions start with 10, every planet from then is worth -2, empty slots are always worth -1, any filled ground or space structure slot that you can see on the galactic map with these icons here is worth +1, shipyards are worth +1, and the local infrastructure building has a bonus point, so it's +2 overall. If you ever need a breakdown on how this works or to be reminded of the mechanics behind it, you can check out the little silver icon on the left side of the screen. That is your resource guide. I hope this has helped some of you with planning out your conquests. Feel free to leave any additional questions in the comments, but you can also join our Discord linked in the description or at discord.gg/CoreyLoses if you want to talk to other players about strategy or just want to see what's coming next with the projects.